In the last video, we spent a lot of time playing with PowerShell to be able to create a local administrator on a host within our domain, but it only did it on the domain controller because that's all that our PowerShell script to generate this Active Directory environment was really running on. It would be very cool if we were able to create local admins across different workstations or other servers within our environment, but that might take a little bit of tinkering and finagling. With that said, I realized that setting up this environment is totally for the sake of creating a vulnerable Active Directory environment. So the stuff that we do within this video might not be crazy realistic or good practice or normal for the sake of a domain, but I hope it can get the idea across and maybe showcase some PowerShell stuff. And I don't know, just explore a little bit more. So I want to be able to create local admins on different workstations that we have set within the environment, if just to showcase doing that. Again, having a local admin account strapped to a domain user isn't maybe really all that good because bad things could come from it, as we will soon see, but that's what we're doing for learning. So I hope you enjoy, and we'll get back to some more messing around in our Active Directory environment. But wait, before we dive in, please allow me to include a message from today's sponsor. There are so many vulnerabilities out there, like prototype pollution, SQL injection, remote code execution, and more. They're fun to play with in CTF challenges, pen testing, and ethical hacking, but they're not so fun when they're in your own applications. And that is where Snyk comes in. Snyk automatically scans your code, dependencies, containers, and config files, finding and fixing vulnerabilities in real time. Here's how easy it is with Snyk. You can sign up for free with my link below, import your repositories, and there. Snyk just finds your vulnerabilities. And it's not just looking for old deprecated libraries. Snyk literally found a serious command injection vulnerability in a project of mine. So all I have to do is fix it with a single click. Snyk will open up fixing pull requests so you can just merge them into your repository and move on. And it does this all from your existing tools, IDEs, the command line, repos, pipelines, Docker Hub, and so many more. And you can see for yourself. Check it out and find out if there are any vulnerabilities affecting your projects. It's all totally free, and you can sign up using my link, snyk.co/John Hammond. Huge thanks to Snyk for sponsoring this video. All right, I am over here on my management client, the Windows 11 machine we have been playing with just previously, and I've been messing around in our PowerShell code that we've written to generate the Active Directory environment, both randomly and from a schema that we can define in JSON. So very, very recently, we just added the functionality, so in our users list of the JSON, we could specify local admin and set that to true. Now that would create this domain account being a local admin on the domain controller, but it would be great if we could spin that out to other machines within the domain. So what if we could instead say, hey, let's have local admin on WS01 and potentially WS02, WS03, or however many devices we might like within the environment. I think that would be ideal, and that's what I want to play with in this video. Bear in mind, again, this is very exploratory and discovery based, and I'm going to make a ton of mistakes, and we're going to learn together. So that's the goal. But the way that we could do that is from our domain controller. I've previously been entering the session of our DC, a DC1, right? And we could add in the credentials that we have received and stored in a credential. Did I totally lose that? xyz.com? Are you missing that? Does it need the IP address? Or is it just like not wanting to play right now? Okay, cool. No, it just needed the IP. So that's all good, fine and dandy. But if we were to run our generate Windows and Active Directory environment from the domain controller, again, we know that's happening solely on the DC. I'm going to undo this environment that we have. I think we did that with the new JSON, but I will go ahead and undo everything to remove our user accounts for us. And what I would like to be able to do is essentially connect to our workstation 01 through the domain controller to create the local admin on that host. Now we could get away with that. We could do this by trying to invoke a command on a remote computer. We would like to be able to say, hey, on WS01, can you please run a script? So we'll specify a script block, and we want to run like the command, who am I? Is that fair? Problem is, right now, WS01 isn't a thing that we know about. We joined this domain by our computer, right, by the current host name of our workstation, which is honestly the like basic default Windows host name, desktop, and then some random string. We could honestly, like, because I couldn't ping WS01, it wouldn't know what that is, but we could ping desktop L31M0V1. Then it knows its IP address because it's part of the domain. It's tracking that. Kind of annoying because I don't want to have to keep track of all of these. So it would be nice if we could actually change the host name of this machine, right? Problem is we'd have to do that for every single workstation and server that we create for a domain. And this isn't the most ideal setup. Within our local lab environment, that's the best I've got right now, but I would love to see your input in the comments. What could we do to make this thing better? So what we could do is honestly try and rename this computer. I'm logged in as my local admin right now for this device, but I could try and rename the computer to something like WS01 as appropriate for this VM. Hit enter on this though, it says the username or password is incorrect, which is kind of odd. Because this machine is joined to the domain, we have to legitimately supply some domain credentials here. And we could go ahead and retrieve credentials with another get credential commandlet and then specify, hey, we know the administrator password for the domain because we are managing this thing, and we can just slap that in. Now that will change the host name. And if I actually pivot back to the domain controller, if I run that get 80 computer, actually specify the filter this time, you'll see that what was once desktop L31M0V1 is now WS01. But this host still has to reboot, so let's go ahead and do that. I'll just restart that guest super quick, and we'll see if this comes back to me in just a moment. A-okay? I'll let him spin up because, again, I do want to be able to validate that we are, in fact, running code on the remote workstation. We'll specify the computer name as WS01 and the script block like, hey, IP config. So we know we'll get the IP address of that workstation. Is this guy spun back up? He is. Perfect. So we could go ahead and log in if we need to, but I'll try and run that command from the DC. Problem is, it doesn't know our relationship yet. And bear in mind, this is where we can get into some of those weird shenanigans where this might not be the most realistic. But maybe it could be if our workstations had a trust and understanding that, okay, our domain controller can remote into us. The same way we set up our management client where we use PowerShell remoting and like, hey, I think it's WSMan, some Windows Services Manager. I'm totally getting that wrong. But it understood we will be able to route in from that. So let's configure that and see if it'll allow us to do that. And then we'll try and create multiple workstations and see how badly we break the domain. Let's try it. Okay, so we can follow the same steps that we had previously to allow remote connections. And when we did this for the management console, we can do this very well for our workstations. I don't know if you remember, but we would enable PS remoting, which again is not on by default for workstations. I believe it is for servers. But now we'll spin up that WinRM service, and with that, we can go ahead and retrieve some of the interesting properties out of that WSMan service. Some of the most interesting being the local host, client, trusted hosts, which it will allow for communication. Right now, that is set to nothing, but we can go ahead and configure that. So let me do that in just a moment. I want to be able to set item on this thing and show you the distinction between this happening on my workstation and how it changes from me being able to remote control into it from my domain controller. Right now, it won't let me, but if I actually allow a value of my DC1 xyz.com, as we know that is the fully qualified domain name from our domain controller, do we want to allow this to happen? Yes, we're totally cool with that, just for our sake of learning and setting up this environment. And now, fingers crossed, can I run this command? Let's use who am I just to get small output. And it's totally not letting me. Okay. Did I do something wrong? Did I break something here? I can ping WS01. We know that's our IP address. But let's see. I want to make sure WinRM is started. Seems to be A-OK. And if I get the value of my current trusted hosts, it is currently dc1xyz.com. That is the host name that I'm connecting from, being 192.168.111.115. Does that work? No. Okay. What if I set the IP address there? Will that behave? Let's set the item to strictly our domain controller. Yes, let's allow that. Pivot back. Let's try to run this. And it still doesn't let me. Okay. I'm totally getting something wrong. Can I enter the PS session here with WS01? Ooh, you're currently in a Windows PowerShell session and cannot use PS session to enter another PS session. That makes sense. Let's try and do this from the domain controller itself. I'm going to send Control-Delete and enter the password for my domain admin. And now let's zoom in on this and try to invoke command on the computer WS01. Maybe that needs to be in quotes for whatever reason. Let's try a script block of who am I? Okay, that comes through. How about ipconfig? That comes through. So if I switch that back to using the dc1xyz.com, will that behave? I'll hit yes on that for our workstation. Let's try that one more time. Still works. Okay. But it didn't want to take it through my PS session. Can I exit that and enter a PS session for my domain controller again? I think we set that as like DC, did we not? Yeah, okay. Can I invoke command WS01? Or was it whining because of the numbers? Maybe the quotes were totally getting in the way. Who am I? That doesn't like it. That's odd. Maybe I need to disconnect. Maybe I need to remove this PS session. If I exit, get PS session. Is that a thing? Yeah. Okay. Exit PS session. 1. Do I need ID 1? What? Hello? Does it need the name? All right, how do I use this thing? Close PS session. Remove PS session. That's it. Cool, cool, cool. ID so 1. And that's all that we need. So now I no longer have that. Let's reconnect and let's see if we have a little bit more capability there. Can I enter PS session of the DC1? It doesn't know what that might be. Oh, because it doesn't know the, it's not on the domain. So we need to specify the IP address every time for that. And then we can use our credentials that we still have saved in a variable. Cred. Now, maybe, please, invoke command, computer. Who am I? Still no. It does not like it. Probably, We know that we're connecting from the admin, though, so that's odd to me. Or we just have to do it from the domain controller every time. I mean, that's an option, but it's still kind of gross and dumb. Maybe. Whatever. Maybe just running it through here is going to be A-okay, but we'll figure it out. For the moment, we know that we will need this trusted host value set and the actually correct host name. So I can like close this machine, shut this down, and how badly will I break stuff if I try to create a snapshot and clone this and create another workstation? I realize this machine is joined to the domain, so stuff might get really, really weird. But let's experiment. Let's take a snapshot. Join domain, allowed PS remoting. And now let's try and clone this to an existing snapshot, create a linked clone. Oh, what did it say? You're already cloning a linked clone. It will require access to all virtual machines it's linked to. That's okay. Let's do WS02. And let's see how badly this thing is broken. If I start this thing up, DHCP, I think, will give us a different IP address. I think. But the host name will still be very, very weird, and the domain controller is probably going to get super freaked out. Might have to disconnect or reconnect to the domain. Like, remove ourselves and then rejoin. Let's try it. Logging in with our local admin account. And if I were to try and change the host name of this machine, I feel like it's best to remove. How about net user domain? Access denied? That's weird. Crest will be processed as the domain. Oh, I'm not a domain user, so we won't know what the heck I'm doing. But my host name is currently WS01 when I want to be WS02. So let's rename the computer to WS02. But that will, of course, need some domain credentials. We'll need to retrieve and actually enter our admin domain controller credentials here. Domain admin. And that will take effect after I reboot. Granted, have we now completely butchered our previous WS01? I feel like that might be the case. Let's restart this thing. And while we're letting that reboot, let's check on the domain controller. What is the status of our AD computers? We have a DC1. We have a WS02. However, we have lost what would have been our WS01. Oh, that sketches me out. So, is the domain, like SID and all this stuff, going to break and do weird shenanigans if I actually turn on WS01? I think we'll get a new IP address, but we can check that. We'll fire up our terminal one more time. I am a local admin currently. And my current IP address is now 148. Okay. Workstation 01. Have a password. Open up our terminal. IP address wise, we should be good. 140, just as we were. However, our DC still knows no difference between what was WS01 and WS02 because we are performing time travel right now. I think we'll have to, let's see, remove computer and leave the domain. Access is denied. Do we need credentials to be able to do that? I think we do. However, it's not going to recognize this machine anymore. So this is going to be super duper borked. Will it? Yeah. That doesn't exist anymore. So we have made a predicament for ourselves by cloning one workstation that was already joined to the domain. Damn. Well, if we revert to snapshot before we've joined the domain controller is going to get super muffed up. We can disconnect this one from the domain, workstation 2, and then we would have to reclone based off of that thing. So that's weird. Or we could do some horrible thing and rename this computer back to WS01? Maybe? Because this is the thing that has a connection currently. The other one doesn't. Or it doesn't have a trust. We have two duplicated machines, and it's super weird. So, domain credential is what we want. We could remove that machine from the domain. This WS02 is now the broken orphan after we change these. This has got to be super confusing to hear out loud. But now our domain controller knows WS01 is who we trust. In which case, we could now leave the domain on WS01. Yes, leave the domain. And that will happen because we have the mapping. WS02 is now a lost child. Switching back to our DC, we no longer... Ooh, have we done horrible things? Can I remove myself on workstation 2? Access is denied. Workstation 1 is removed. WS02 still thinks its name is WS02. But if once we reboot, he will still be that. He will revert back to WS01 as his host name. This was an awful idea. Cloning clients from a snapshot already joined the domain is just like, I don't know, messing with the multiverse. This is like the phase 6 of the MCU. What do we know? Domain controller still sees WS01. WS02 is WS01. Hostname WS01. Please leave the domain and help the domain controller realize that there's no friends left. Credential. I don't know what's going on with my Z key. Yes, leave the domain. Is the domain controller going to figure this out? Or are we doing weird shenanigans? Okay. Theoretically left. Domain controller still thinks he exists, but we've now been able to remove both of these machines from the domain. So let's restart both WS01 and WS02. Do I need to restart my domain controller? That feels weird. Oh, maybe it's because it's enabled being false. Was that what it was previously? Yeah, it's what it was the whole time. Once we left with one of them. Wild. Oh, sorry. And logging into both our workstations super quick. Now WS02 is still named WS01. We are no longer joined to domain, however, so we can rename the computer without a problem. And then we would need to reboot one more time. WS01 knows that it is WS01. But let's clean WS02. And let's add our computer to the domain xyz.com. And you will need to have admin credentials. Good. Now, once this connects to the domain, DC1 will see that no longer enabled false, but enabled true. Perfect. And now WS02 is ready to join the domain as WS02. Despite our awful time travel, we have somehow pulled ourselves out of that abyss and fractal paradox. Hang on. Our current host name, WS02. Let's add ourselves back to the domain. Please. And you know that you need credentials. Oh my goodness. How much time have we killed? Almost a half hour just messing with this. Now, DC1 sees both WS01 and WS02. Excellent. That was a disaster. But we can reboot this machine. We can reboot this machine. And theoretically, I hope we have still maintained the ability to invoke commands on a remote computer such as WS01 once he comes back online with the correct IP address of what that machine might be. WS02 is also still online, and they should have maintained the snapshotted capability for the remote host connection. Please, dear God. Oh my goodness. What? Are you just slow because you don't know anything? Hello? No. Is it because it's just not on? Is the service not running? Let's try it on WS2. While we ensure that the WinRM service is running. Kick that up. He's still dying. So we'll probably have to do the very, very same for this fella. And we already enabled PS remoting. I can get item back on workstation 1, localhost client trusted hosts, correct? And we know that we trust the DC, which we know who that is because we are member of the domain. Same thing with workstation 2. Let's verify is WSMan running at all as we start this thing up? Because if I get an error when trying to connect to this PS drive, oh yeah, okay, see, it told me, hey, it's not started, and that would be why we wouldn't have been able to actually connect to this, but we can once it's on. Okay, so this was a garbage experiment, not really worth it. But I don't know. Maybe it's been fun to create these local admin accounts, and hopefully anyway. Workstation 1 is set. Workstation 2, all we need to do is start the service, WinRM, and now he'll be good to connect. So we should see 140 for Workstation 1, and we can see our IP address being 148 for Workstation 2. Okay, now, can we modify from our management client? Actually, we can now connect to this. No, we still can't. Our PS session is probably doing weird stuff. So let's let's just rely on running it from the domain controller virtual machine itself. But we can modify our genAD function. This allowed us to specify local admin on the domain controller itself. But we want to be able to look through the objects. So while we did this for groups just a moment ago, we can do that very, very well. We could do for each host name, really, in our user object using a period to reference that, since I was banging my head against that wall for however long. I'm sorry, it's been a few days since I recorded. Local admin. What we can try to do is this horrible thing, invoke command computer hostname, as we now know that we can do that, with the script block being our net user add command with the appropriate username. And we no longer need that. So forgive my face being in the way, but now we're going to loop through every single host name and actually go ahead and add our administrators to each host with our horrific remote setup. So what we've now created is the ability to use an Active Directory schema with employees being created, Alice, Bob, and I guess we can add Charlie Harley. How about that? We'll do Charlie Harley. And let me make this sort of like what we had previously. We had Bubbles as a password. We totally had, what was it? I think Ashley was literally a password. And let's do password ABC. I don't care. Who cares? Doesn't matter. Now, let's go ahead and actually make Alice a local admin on WS01. Let's make Bob Ob a local admin on WS02. And let's make Charlie Harley a local admin on both WS01, WS02, and our domain controller. Now, here's a crazy autocarcophagus cannibalism idea. Can I invoke command on myself as the DC? I don't know why I wouldn't be able to. Oop. Please. Okay, dope. That's awesome. That lets me do it. Now, I think we are A-okay. We have created this schema with local admin functionality put in place. Hopefully our script will handle that correctly, and we'll try to remotely add our capability here and there. So what I'm going to do is exit out of this remote session from my management thing and copy the new file. I have lost my DC connection, so let's do another new PS session. Or can I just get PS session ID 1? Or get PS session should return. Oh, I have no sessions. Okay, never mind. So let's create a new one. DC can equal new PS session to 192.168.111.155. Credential will be cred. Yeah? Good. Copy item. We'll bring that to the DC. Excellent. And let's take our AD schema over there just as well. Now, we know we need to run this on the domain controller. And we're going to do some crazy, horrible thing where we will move into C Windows tasks. And we currently have no Active Directory environment users, right? AD users filter, get AD user, only the default accounts. Same thing with groups, group. But if I actually take a look at admins. There's obviously nothing because there are no users. So let's trust the fact that we can now run genAD with our AD schema and hope that our syntax is all correct and we'll do some magic to connect to those other workstations. Cross our fingers. Oh, no. No, 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 no. 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 Not specified. What does that mean? Is it not knowing the variables that we pass in? I think that's it. Oh no. All right, well, we can undo pretty easily, right? Tack undo and we remove those accounts. But now let's clean and determine what this might be. Can I set that as a variable? Add command can be set to that, correct? And then we will run add command. And that should be able to figure that out, I think. Can script block take like a string? Let's echo what this thing looks like. How about that? So that way we can see as we run it. Cool. So still in my management VM, let's copy genAD back over. Let's pivot to the domain controller. And now let's try and run that one more time. Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness. I think it worked. There were no errors. It probably couldn't figure out what the variables were within the context of running this thing. So when we had it as a string that already captured those things, I think it worked. Maybe. Net user. So these are all domain accounts locally, correct? Hang on. Let's start small. Let's go workstation 1. Workstation 1 is not, I'm not currently logged in as a domain user. I'm currently logged in as local admin. So if I log out of workstation 1, I could now log into XYZ Alice, and her password was Bubbles, correct? Now she is the admin. She's a local admin for workstation 1. That is what we set, isn't it? We can do the very, very same for workstation 2. Let's just sign out. And it'll do its thing. So let's log in as Bob. And we set his password to Ashley, I think. Yeah. Taking some time. There we go. Okay, workstation 1 is fired up. And I can run the local ad. Oh, no. Can I not? I am a local admin. Am I not? Alice. Bubbles. No. Did we get any command output? Net user. Domain. Those are our domain users. But if I check out the local group administrators, please tell me Alice is in here. No. What did we do wrong? It looked like it worked, didn't it? Bob should be an administrator. No. Okay, what about Charlie should be an administrator? No. I'm super bummed. Literally, running that command should work, should it not? We straight up saw invoke command computer WS01 net local group administrators xyz.com Charlie add. Is xyz.com wrong? If I paste this command and run it, what? Oh, we did it on WS01. Charlie. He's there. Did our script just not do it? Invoke command, computer hostname, script block, add command. This is blowing my mind right now. What if we pipe that to invoke expression? So we get this evaluated properly and then actually run it without worrying about the variable expansion? Maybe? Like, looking back on the DC, when we ran those commands, it should have told me, hey, this command completed successfully. That would have been a success, correct? So let's gen AD schema, undo, correct? Let's grab this new AD over there, bring it over. If I cat out my AD schema, local admin is properly set. If we cat out our gen AD, we know that we are echoing this to invoke expression, so it should execute. Let's try that one. Let's do it. Command completed successfully. Command completed successfully. We did it. That was such a stupid hack. Okay. So I'm on the domain controller. I have net users. Obviously the same for the domain and for the local host. However, net local group administrators should have Charlie. Yeah. And Alice now is properly set as an admin on this machine. So is Charlie. And on workstation 2, Bob is the admin. So I can now close out that terminal, try and run the terminal again, run as administrator, and you should totally let me do this. Ashley is his password? No. Is it for the domain? Or do I just need to log out? Maybe I need to log out. Let's log out. Let's try the same for Ashley or Alice. Oh my gosh. And let's see how that looks. Alice again. Bubbles is her password. Bob. Log in. Oh, now it has to recreate. Oh, because it's a new domain user. I follow. We were in another zombie land when we clobbered or erased the Active Directory environment, and now we're in a new one. So it's creating a new profile and stuff. But now I'm logged in as the truest Alice that there ever was. And I right-click, run as administrator, and we don't get a domain admin prompt. We're totally cool to do it. And we are Alice. And we are a local admin on this machine. We have configured it so that we're also a local admin on this other machine. And we're good. And my golly, that was an adventure. Do the same thing as Bob, right? Heck yeah. And Charlie, of course, can be here and there and everywhere. Dude, we rocked that one. That was awesome, everybody. I'm truly sorry. I realized that made zero sense while I was trying to explain it, but I hope it kind of came together. I hope we were able to see what we did there. In our management client, we are able to now, in a again, super weird way, specify the hosts that we want this domain user to be a local admin on for the appropriate workstation host name within our domain environment. We did some janky, weird, hey, actually enabling those trusted hosts so we can remote control them from the DC, but doing it on the DC works for us, and we can configure that as we would like with our schema. So that was a success, I think, as weird as it is. If anything, it opens the door for what we can tackle in the very, very next video, because we've been having a little bit of fun, everybody. We've been goofing off. We've been doing some cool things to create these local admin accounts, but now I want to show you that real power when you, as the red teamer or the penetration tester, find the local admin accounts, and how you could very well just try and jump in onto a account. You could try and connect to a machine where you could just become a local admin and interact with that and gain initial access with those local admin credentials that you find when they're tied to a domain controller or domain user. So, whew. How you feeling, everybody? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do all those YouTube algorithm things. You know, it helps the channel grow. Like, comment, subscribe. Also lets me know that you're enjoying this stuff. And I hope you're bearing with me and some of the crazy, random, weird, wild stuff I'm up to for this series. But it's slowly building up to some very cool stuff. And we're going to keep doing more of it. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I love you. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.